All right, coming to the stage right now to lead us in discussing international distribution and logistics. Moderating the panel is the Vice President of Growth at Blaze. Let's hear it for Shabazz Karavarani. Yeah! Everybody come in and sit down.
All right, we can get going. So it's the last panel of the day, so we're gonna have some fun. It's gonna be fantastic, and really appreciate everyone staying. How's everyone's day been so far? Yeah, good? Learned a lot? Yeah, you guys sleeping? All right, wake up. Time to wake up because we got some real things to discuss. So we're gonna jump right into it. Today we're talking about international distribution and logistics, and this group collectively moves a fuck ton of weed internationally, everybody. I think that's the technical phrase. Maybe that's French or something along those lines. But we're gonna get going. So please, panelists, introduce yourself and talk to us about the last problem you solved. 45 seconds, and we'll jump right in. Let's go. Catherine, starting with you.
My name is Catherine. I am the founder of Canalink Limited. We are a logistics brokerage in Canada, so we offer domestic solutions, whether that be ground or air, as well as import and export globally. A problem that I had, I mean, in supply chain in general, as I'm sure a lot of people are aware, whether it's, general cargo or anything high value, you're always gonna have issues in the supply chain industry. I think just not a specific scenario, because again, I'm not gonna be out here to give out certain companies privacy, but there's been times where you have a shipment that gets stolen or back into the black market. I think as a supply chain coordinator or operations or just anybody in that industry, your job is to figure out a solution when that does happen. So again, in the last 7 years of legalization, there's been a lot of shipments that have unfortunately gotten stolen, gone missing, back into the black market. And it's one of those things where between having the knowledge, understanding of the industry and the commodity itself, the importance of it, the risk management, how to mitigate that, that's something that thankfully we have not had a lot of, and I'm very proud of that with my company and my staff. So yeah, just mitigating loss at all costs.
We're gonna be diving into that a lot today. Mitigating loss and just risk aversion in general. I know that's Jonas's favorite topic, so let's go over to you, Jonas.
All right, so Jonas Beeler, owner, president of Boomer Logistics. We have been transporting produce and cannabis across Canada and internationally since it was legalized in Canada. I think what I would say is the problem we often solve is risk mitigation, but I think about it from a different perspective. I think about it from the perspective of you guys, so whether you're a grower or whether you are a middleman. I hate to admit this part, but I'm an accountant. Professional accountant who found my way into logistics, found the two awesome career choices. But we understand that from the time you plant the seed to the time it develops into cash, maybe not even profit, that's 6 to 8 months. And so our viewpoint is, how do we help you mitigate risk to ensure that you see the fruition of that hard work? And the reality is we try and remove or provide full transparency so that you can see everything, and that's kind of how we run our business.
And real quick, what was the last problem you solved?
Fixing my flight to this conference.
That's a real problem, and you had to solve it. So cheers, Jonas. We're excited to have you. Tim, over to you.
Hey, everybody. My name is Tim Conder. I'm the CEO for Jupiter Research. Jupiter researches, develops, and distributes vaporization hardware to the cannabis industry globally. I would say the last problem that we solved that's also pertinent to this conference this week is we developed and commercialized with our partners Curaleaf and SOMI, the EU industry's first medically registered vaporization devices, which it created a new category for cannabis here in the EU.
Wow, congratulations. Amazing, Tim. All right, my man, over to you.
What was your problem that you solved there, Tim?
Who you are first.
Someone who doesn't want to smoke flower only?
Got it. My name is Ryan. I'm with Greenjoy. I'm the COO and partner. We are a premium flower LP out of Canada, and we serve primarily international markets. We've been licensed for going on 5 years now, and we do have a local presence, but the focus truly is international and has been since the onset. Prior to that, I had a 20-year career in international logistics and distribution, working for some of the leading global forwarders. I was actually hired and I got into this game by Cannabis Growth back in 2016 to manage the first ever export of legal cannabis for them. And at the time, the airlines had never moved a gram. Customs never handled any cannabis shipments at all. That was on both sides of the borders that it was going, first to Germany, second to Australia. So throughout that time, I really got involved with this. It was super fun. I felt like I was a pioneer at the time. And so since then, I never looked back. I joined Canopy Growth, and then a couple years after that, started Green Joy with my partner. Problem that I solved just last week in an S&OP meeting with one of my customers and one of my GMP conversion partners. We mapped the entire supply chain. There's been recent updates and changes with permitting and all these things. We mapped the entire supply chain, we reviewed it all, and we were able to shave off about 4 weeks of overall throughput time. To your point, Jonas, time is money, and so we're always focused on that.
Awesome, Ryan. Well done. And think about that, everybody, for a second, what Ryan just said. First shipping of cannabis. Think about how crazy that is. We work in an industry where we get to do that globally. That's crazy. We're living through an amazing, amazing time. So I just want to remind everybody of that. Like, there are a lot of firsts going on in this industry, and that's why ICBC is putting on this conference. So well done on that. All right, Klaus, over to you, hermano.
Thanks. Well, I'm the plus one. I'm in the hemp business from Ecuador. Cannabis is the first fully integrated licensed company in Ecuador. Ecuador only does hemp. And I'm really glad to be here because I'm the first Ecuadorian company to ever be at ICBC at the speaker panel. So I'm very thankful for the organizers for everything. Thank you. And it just comes to show how important this conference is and how it's becoming a global game changer. As Cannabis, we're the first company to ever produce, get license, genetics, export biomass, export flower, and now exporting isolate into to the US mostly. I'm here to understand what the European market is. I am the plus one in the party because everybody's talking about THC, but it's good to be here and learn about what's going on. We only do CBD. And for the flowers, I have exported a lot of flowers because I come from the flower business, fresh cut flowers. Been 40 years in the business from the group that owns Cannabis, so been working with this company for 40 years and exporting a hell lot of tons of fresh cut flowers. The last problem we solved, which I think is quite interesting, and taking into a previous panel, we're the first company to ever do water-based solventless extraction for isolate, which is a game changer because it turns into organic extraction. They were talking about earlier about hydrocarbon extractions and how this leaves some traces of hydrocarbons on the extractions. And we have our own patented technology, and we have water-based extraction, so our isolate is organically extracted, and that's a game changer because we're bringing in an isolate that is responsible and that can be used for any kind of application without any traces of hydrocarbons.
Awesome, Klaus, and you're not the plus one, my man. You're not the plus one. We're happy to have you here, and we'll be talking a little bit about hemp. And so when you think about this panel today, everyone's talking about brands, retailers, everyone across the supply chain, but really what this panel here today is about how to control the movement of cannabis. You can have a global cannabis organization, global cannabis supply chain, but if you don't understand how to actually move that cannabis, then it becomes very, very difficult. So I want to open it up really quickly and ask you, Ryan, Catherine, Jonas, Tim, Klaus, how do you actually move cannabis, let's say from a country like Canada, into a country like Germany, especially with all the rules, the different ways of business, the regulations, so on and so forth. And as we discussed, we've moved a lot of cannabis throughout this group's tenure. So maybe Catherine, we'll start with you. How does the actual supply chain happen when you're looking at a Canadian entity trying to move cannabis into the EU?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you look at the product of cannabis, obviously it's a very time and temperature sensitive product, right? It's not your average any type of commodity. It's, we, in Canada, especially when we first became legalized, and I'm sure there's a couple people in here that can speak on terms of that, I've been working with for around 7 years, that Health Canada didn't really write too many regulations on the transportation or distribution of it when it leaves the facility. So we've kind of had to not necessarily make it up on our own as we go, but follow other types of commodities, whether from the food or pharmaceutical industry to say, okay, how can we move it from here to here to ensure that risk management is in place, whether that's insurance that's required, temperature, time sensitivity, all those extra paperwork and documents that's needed, right? So I think when it comes on to the global standpoint of that, it's the same type of scenario how we do it in Canada. Really, it's just making sure that you also have really good partnerships on the other end of the receiving team, right? Whether that is on your logistics, your distributors, your buyers. All of that is really important to, really ensure that you have a very successful supply chain from start A to Z, not A to C, right? So I would say that's pretty much, there's a lot more that goes into it. It is not a quick turnover, obviously, which I'm sure Ryan could speak a little bit more to as that as well, but yeah.
Okay, so let's just continue on this note. So you said something about finding really good partners and understanding the partners from A to Z. Jonas, how do you know what a good partner is, and how do you identify a good partner?
Do you want the serious answer or the joking one? The joking
which
one
answer
is
do
the
you
one
want?
that pays is the good partner. But I think, from our perspective, the way we look at this is our job is to help mitigate risk. You'll hear me say it over and over again. And then how do we do that? So I think one mistake that often people do is they use a third-party logistics provider, and then they use a third-party customs brokerage. And the problem with that is now you have two different parties that are trying to manage what is a complex situation. You're moving through customs. So, for example, in our business, we decided that we wanted that to be in-house. So we have customs in-house, and one could argue that would make us a good partner to growers and to brokers. On the other side, everyone says they have insurance. We have insurance. But what I've learned through the years of many cars, home insurance and all that is it's not what's insured, it's actually the opposite. It's what's not insured. And so a good partner is someone who is transparent and provides you the actual information of what you require. So when talking about insurance, the first question that should be asked when you're shipping products overseas is, tell me about your insurance, but specifically, tell me what's not insured in your policy. Because that's how you're able to measure risk and reward. That's how you measure the cost of moving your product from point A to point B and whether it makes sense.
Super, super, super sound advice. I want everyone to remember that because that's huge. You always ask what's insured, but what's not insured is that prime time, game time advice that we're looking for over here. All right, Tim, let's go over to you. So we talk a lot about cash conversion cycles. Help us understand what true cash conversion cycles throughout the international logistics and supply chain really look like in today's world.
I mean, they're probably different for our business than they are for importers and exporters of cannabis. We are one of, if not the largest distributor of hardware internationally. So most hardware is manufactured and shipped from Asia, primarily China. And essentially, like, that product's being manufactured, it's being shipped, it's getting to the customer. And in our case, customer's not paying for that product until it actually, they're in receipt of it. So product can take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks to be manufactured, anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks to be shipped overseas. Depending on the country that it's arriving in, it can take anywhere from a couple of days to several weeks, even months, to be released from customs, at which point you complete the last mile transportation of that product and it gets to the customer finally, at which point they're invoiced. And in our case, customers can have anywhere from 15 to 90-day terms. So it's a very long process to actually recognize revenue within our business. And that's because we're not going to charge the customer until they've received the product and have the opportunity to commercialize that product and receive funds from their customers as well.
Really important distinction from the hardware perspective relative vis-a-vis to the flower perspective. So Ryan, let's go over to you. How does that cash conversion cycle differ from what Tim just mentioned?
To be honest, I think that's the game. That's the game we're playing right now. Especially in Canada, up until very recently, banks were not in the game. They weren't working with any cannabis companies, not even the big guys. It was only in the last year and a half or so that you really started to see. And even today, it's selective, and there's still few companies that actually work with true legitimate banks. Meaning that if you're covering a cash conversion cycle, or similar in cannabis, we have 14 weeks from the initial clone until it's packaged, ready to go, and then depending on what your supply chain looks like, so the terms you have with your partners, you're either selling to a wholesaler, and the terms are going to probably be 60 to 90 days these days, and hopefully you get paid in that time. That's the other thing. And then if you're controlling the entire supply chain, say right into Germany, from the time that you ship until the pharmacy pays, you're looking at approximately 90 to 120 days, depending on the agreement. So you're looking at 200 days of cash-to-cash cycle time, that with no bank, and we pay my hydro bills $54,000 a month, you know what I mean? That doesn't include everything else. So it's a heavy burden for the LP to carry, but again, I think that is the key to the game. So effectively managing that, and so back to your initial question about how do you move cannabis, I think the movement of cannabis is one piece of it, but when you look at it all together, you need to remove all of those non-value adding activities from the supply chain. You need to iron out all of that dead time. And the only way to really do that is to have a high level of integration with your supply chain partners, with your processors, and to be talking to each other. Relationships, trust, transparency, changing dynamics, those all need to be clear so that you can work collectively together to minimize the overall exposure.
Can I add one thing on that? Because it's a good point. That's the perspective, which is most of you in here, of the grower. And you asked me what makes a good partner. We have to understand that too. So just because we're sitting on this side and saying, hey, we can move your product from point A to point B, and this is maybe where the accountant part of me comes back in, but whether you're using your own money or whether you've raised money, the last thing anyone wants to do is say, oops. We tried to ship $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $200,000, $50,000 worth of goods overseas, and it got confiscated. It got damaged. It got lost. And so everything that we do, and when we're looking for why people choose a good brokerage, a good logistics partner, is do they understand your pain points? Do they understand that it is not just for profits? Because in a lot of cases, it's not even profits, it's just cash, right? There are a lot of businesses that are still in the growth mode, and there's no profits to be seen. So we understand that it's 8 months for cash to come back in your pocket, and therefore, our job is to make sure that we secure this, and we do that by communicating with you guys, and you guys have to make the right choices. And the right choices are buy the insurance that actually covers your product, and buy the transportation that, you shouldn't take the most expensive, but if the cheapest is 30% off what's being asked in the market, you're just putting yourself at risk, and you're putting the company potentially at risk as well.
Yeah, big time.
So, I mean, you joked that a good partner is someone who pays you, but from your all's perspective, a good partner on the logistics and distribution side is a partner that helps you manage that cash conversion cycle.
100%, and the risk, right? I totally agree. I mean, I think that's what our job is to be empathetic, understand that what you guys are doing is big, it's expensive, it takes time, working capital is real, and then work with you in a collaborative way to de-riskify the movement of that product and build long-term relationships.
Yeah, that's really, really, again, sound advice. I'm going to go to Klaus for a second because I don't want to leave our +1 out by any means.
But I do want to take.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm loving this situation here because it's kind of like I'm remembering all the things that we had to go through, and I wish you would have been in Ecuador, and I would have wished I would hire you. Please open offices back down there because everything you guys are talking about is the same point that we had. Even if it's hemp, it's still imagine a country that's never raised this plant before. They have no idea what this is. And there's some crazy company here, growing something that by the eye looks exactly like cannabis. Yes, it's not gonna get you high, but looking at it, smelling at it, it's the same. So when we started, we had even police coming to our farm and say, hey, these guys are growing marijuana. Like, hey, we have a permit, this is hemp. And then explain to the authorities what is hemp. And hey, I have a license. And then the pain point was, okay, we have clients. How do we get this into our clients? And I wish I would have met you sooner. We lost containers in Mexico. We lost flour in the road. We actually got in trouble because our logistic partner, like you said, one was the agent, one was the logistic partner, and they didn't understand that when our our cargo was going to the final customer, they were stopping in Mexico, but they did not have to go through Mexican territory. They had to go some kind of only temporary warehouse and not touch Mexican territory, because once they did, it got confiscated. So we had a lot of issues. So I'm resonating with what you guys are saying, because we had to build this from the scratch. Your country actually understood what was going on. We had to bring anti-narcotics, and because the dogs are trained to smell cannabis or hemp, it smells the same. So the dog would sit down, and he's trained to sit down. And I'd be like, yes, but it's not marijuana, but he's sitting down.
You're reasoning with the dog.
And then the reactives they use to test what you're having, it's gonna lie blue. And I'm like, yeah, but this is not marijuana, this is hemp. And it was so freaking hard. And even to today, we had to train the authorities, and we had to buy equipment for them to actually test, so they can believe what we have there is hemp. So we had to buy chromatography as an spectrometer, so they can actually, because I'll be like, this is hemp, and you're like, how do I know? Smoke and let me know if you get high.
It's a really good point, because we talked a lot about the initial outset of this panel about it's a lot of first times, right? First times for us, and luckily we're from Canada and different places. We've seen this over the years, but to Klaus, your point, you have to train and condition a lot of different people across the supply chain, across a lot of different countries for the first time. And so, on that note, we'll kind of go back to Catherine here. Where are a lot of, international suppliers, distributors, logistics organizations, where are they, knowing what you know today, where are they kind of tripping up still, or, what kinds of pieces of advice would you offer and levy for this group out here, knowing that you came from, the Canadian market?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of the Canadians can attest for this back, upon legalization, even going back to 2013 to 2016, everybody that came from the supply chain or distribution just assumed for some reason that all the cannabis companies had millions and millions of dollars. And even if they did, once
Wait, they don't?
I mean, they just thought, oh, we can just charge whatever you want for a truck. At that same point, and there's a couple people, I could see Sarah and Neil here probably can agree with me, where we were getting charged $20,000, $30,000 for a truck, when realistically the going market rate was, 6,500 Canadian, right? But they had just had this assumption that, okay, well, they're cannabis, they must have millions of dollars, we're gonna charge this, but not understand what is the commodity, how should we ship it, right? All these Canadian producers, and even on the global side and in Germany as well, are very well versed in this commodity, in this product, from the growing stage to the scientific stage of it, to the genetics, the clones, the flower, to the cuttings, the whole entire process. But that goes for the supply chain distribution as well, and I know Jonas can attest to this as well on my behalf. We have to be just as knowledgeable in it. We have to stay up to date with the risks and regulations that are happening globally or domestically. So yeah, I think to that point, it's one of those things where it goes both ways. We can't expect that, okay, you guys have to know everything about the plant, but we can just put in a truck and hope it makes it there, knock on wood. No, there's a lot of things that, after hours, we have to make sure we're there for the clients as well. We have to understand, what are we shipping? This is not a commodity that costs 10 cents a gram. And even if it does, there's just so much more operationally and license-wise that goes into it. So much hard work, years of hard work that people across the world have fought to get this drug, as in some countries it's still labeled as, to where we are now, where we can freely talk about it, market it, put it on LinkedIn or TikTok or Facebook, come to events like this, and now ship it and put it on an airplane. So I would say that's probably, where we're at with that. And it's still, we're a very long ways away from probably where we want to be, globally.
You told me a funny story about how in the early days they're around the armored trucks, right? Transporting things around, and now that's no longer the case. And so how things change. So Jonas, let's go to you for a second here. How mature do you believe the international logistics supply chain is today? Obviously, you've taken a few things in-house with your custom brokerage and things of that nature, but overall, globally, from your perspective, how mature or immature is this landscape today?
Well, if we take how many countries in the world recreationally legal, 2, 3, how many is it? And then medicinally,
3, yeah.
Handful. So we're very much in the early stages. Airlines still trying to figure it out. You have airlines that are coming in, going out, coming back in, going back out. We'll do it, we won't do it. So I think it's early stages. I do like what you said about people taking advantage they have this perception that the cannabis space is filled with a bunch of tech bros who made a bunch of money in the tech scene, and now they've moved over into the cannabis space. And I think for a time that may have been true, but I think we've moved on beyond that. So we're certainly in the infancy stage. I think because of that, we all have to be smart in how we do things. Direct flights, whenever possible. Should not be stopping over anywhere to save $1. Go direct to where you want your product to be delivered. Try and stay away from passenger aircrafts. You want to be on cargo jets. Why? Well, I'm an obsessive golfer, and let's say I'm going golfing and I decide to take 5 sets of golf clubs. My 5 golf clubs are going on that plane. Your pallet of weed is not. So if you go on a cargo plane, your product's going, less weather, less technical difficulty. So those are the things that you want to make sure someone's thinking of. You guys don't need to think of that. That's the logistics side of it that should be thinking of it. But those are the things I would add in there.
Smart. Looking around the room, I see a lot of operators. Tim, what are 1 or 2 things today leaving this room that some of these operators can do to de-risk their operations?
Probably just get a global understanding of how your supply chain works, regardless of the product that you're shipping, right? Cannabis obviously has a lot of volatility due to how new it is as a product that gets shipped internationally. But there are a lot of issues with the global supply chain in general, and things are shifting all the time as it relates to the global supply chain.
How do you get that information, though? Things are shifting a lot. We talk a lot about how cannabis moves faster than the internet, right? Which is crazy, and AI potentially. Where do you get that information from? Where do you look at it, and how do you become in the know as it's moving in real time?
Partners like this panel, right? Your logistics provider, your partner in shipping should be able to answer those questions for you. They should be able to give you the lay of the land, help you understand how international shipping has changed, how trade routes have changed, how fees related to shipping have changed, and what impacts that, right? And if they can't answer those questions in detail, then they're the wrong partner, because they may be outsourcing parts of the supply chain that create, some opaqueness in what their total understanding of that landscape is.
That's awesome advice. And so, again, shout out to ICBC, shout out to a good buddy of mine, Alex Revich, right here, and Alex Rogers, because this is how you learn. And so, I'm Canadian. I live in the States now, but proud Canadian. And Canada, I'd love to see, their leadership on the global stage. Ryan, you've been around the Canadian market for quite some time. What's Canada's role over the next 5 years as, the globe starts to shift? Do they still continue to have this dominance in terms of exports, or what's going to happen with Canada overall?
If I told you, I'd have to kill you. But I wish I knew.
I can't die today. I got an after party to attend. I can't die today.
I think Canada, first and foremost, we were a front runner in this. Out of the gate, we got the first mover advantage. However, you hear of Thai weed coming in, and its quality is increasing every day. Same can be said of other countries. I think if Canada wants to maintain its position and remain relevant in the future of cannabis, it needs to continue to up its game when it comes to overall quality. I think that today it has the reputation as a higher quality sourcing partner or location, but again, I think others are catching up quick. I think Canada needs to keep the pressure on. I also think that efficiencies, competitive advantage for Canada is in certain provinces, the cost of water, the cost of labor, and the cost of electricity. Those are the 3 inputs it goes to make cannabis. And Canada, relative to most places like Europe, for example, will have a competitive advantage there. With other countries coming into the game that have lower cost of labor or whatnot, there has to be a different differentiating factor other than just cost. So I think the drive for even greater quality, unique genetics, the next newest thing, is where the focus needs to be.
Awesome advice. Klaus, over to you. You talked a lot to this panel about, I wish I, knew you before, and, so on and so forth. So now that you've heard everyone speaking here, and when you look at your role in the hemp market, which, you're trying to, coach dogs against hemp versus cannabis, which I think is hilarious. What are you going to take moving out of this room? What are you going to do differently, or how are you going to look at structuring your business based on, what you've learned today? Because you're actually moving a lot of hemp, right? And you're the first Ecuadorian to do this. What are you going to do walking out of this room knowing what you know today?
First, I'm gonna take Jonas for a drink and have him give me all that advice because he knows what he's doing.
I like to drink too, by the way.
Okay, let's make a party. I think a lot of things that I take from here, I think I'm learning a lot of the European business because we're focused on the US primarily, and the volumes of hemp that the US moves are much bigger. And right now, there's kind of a weird situation in the US going on with the change of the laws and how it's gonna be moving forward after November. So that's why I'm here to Europe to understand. So I take a lot of things from here. I take, hopefully first, a lot of new friends. And that's, I think, something I take from ICBC and also from this panel, which is great. I take a lot of information and knowledge about what European is doing, what European market is doing, more European. It's very interesting for me because this is very focused on medical, THC, very focused on GMP, dispensaries, more of a pharmaceutical pharmacies, if you will. And for me, that's very interesting because that's not the way the US is doing right now. The US is using CBD for drinks. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of movement, especially on the drinks, the seltzers with THC and CBD. There's a lot of the edibles. So I take a lot of things from here, and I think the first thing is friends, and the second thing that I take is a lot of knowledge, and hopefully to be a permanent member of this wonderful conference.
Amazing. And, just being on this panel and asking you questions, I've learned a ton. I mean, it always reminds me of how crazy this industry is and how many form factors are in here and how many different inputs actually have to, go right across the supply chain. So we're going to have time for 2 questions, but before we kind of wrap up, I'm going to definitely get to you for sure. Thanks for that strong hand up quickly. I like that. We're going to get to that guy for sure. If everyone was sleeping, which I'm looking at all of you, and some of you are, this guy over here, no, I'm just kidding, you're not sleeping. Look, it's been an engaging, enthralling panel, and if everyone was sleeping and didn't remember anything, we've talked a lot about cash conversion cycles, we've talked a lot about risk mitigation, we've talked about, how to find a good partner across the supply chain. What is one thing that if, everyone has to take away from here, what would you say is that one thing that needs to be on the tips of their tongues walking out of here? We'll go around the horn, and then we'll open it up for 2 questions. Catherine?
I think it just kind of comes down to, again, that global partnership, right? I mean, we're all in this together, whether you are a producer in the supply chain, insurance, investor, capitalism, advocating for cannabis on any of the government panels, we're all in this together. So I think the biggest takeaway, and I think in general from the ICBC conference in itself, is that make those partnerships, make them meaningful, connect with people, but just remember you're not doing it alone. You don't have to do it alone, and we are all here, to help each other out as a team. And yeah, it's a very new and volatile industry. To Ryan's point, it's very early stages. Even for Canada, it's still there's things that we need to kind of work our way out. But for a lot of new countries, it's very new and it's very exciting and it's scary. But yeah, just keep those partnerships going.
Awesome. Jonas?
I think trusted partnerships. I think that the cannabis space has come a long way. There's a lot of good people in this space now, which is great. And I think it's important that regardless of who you're working with, that you trust them and that you're in it together. I think that's a good way that you summarized it, is that we're all in this together. Everyone has to understand everyone's pain points, and that's how you build collaborative solutions.
Trust and empathy. Trust and empathy. Tim?
Deeply understand your supply chain. Work with partners who can help you gain that deep understanding and mitigate the risk that's inherent in all supply chains, but especially in cannabis. It's not an afterthought. It is part of your business.
Whereas you have that trust and empathy, it's also up to you to know exactly what piece of where is happening so that you actually can drive that forward. Ryan?
I agree with all that you said. I definitely feel strongly about the need for great partnerships and relying on those partnerships and leveraging them. One piece of advice I may give on top of that is don't take anything for granted. Supply chains are not static. They're always evolving, especially in this crazy game. So go back, reassess, like I had mentioned in my opening, we went and we did a review after a supply chain mapping exercise, and we were able to shave out, weeks just because of some changes in the regulations, how it works. So don't take things for granted and leverage those partnerships.
Constantly be moving, constantly evolving. Klaus?
I'm taking from a conference or the previous panels that were talking about extraction, and made a very good point. They said, what good is your biomass being organic, your soil grower, if once you put it through your extract facility, you're going to have a lot of residues. So I would like to leave the note of solventless, water-based extraction. I think that is the future. We've invested a lot on that IP. I think, especially for the pharma, if you're going to use anything from cannabis or hemp, whatever it is, if everything is very good on the agricultural side and then you put hydrocarbons in it, once you have your product, it's going to have traces of it. It's not smart. You're basically, getting dirty, something you try to keep clean through the whole process. So if you can do, if you can be responsible in your process and do what we're doing, I think that's going to be a game changer, not only for hemp, but for THC. Once that technology shifts to the cannabis, I think being able to extract with water, it's an amazing thing.
Wonderful. Okay, I believe we have time for one, if not two questions. Let's go over here. Oh, there's Mike.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Yoram. So thank you very much for this interesting panel. I'm the CEO of Cannabilog. Cannabilog is a global logistic provider. We are acting in more than 25 countries, doing import and export of cannabis products, including all the hemp and everything. Personally, I was the head of global supply chain and logistics for Teva Pharmaceuticals for 14 years. So I'm coming from the pharma industry. So thank you for this interesting point. We are providing services all over the place globally. You were talking about Canada, but I think that we should talk about Europe, as we are in Germany right now. So we provided a network of very sophisticated services along Europe with all the countries. My question is for you, Jonas. I was a little bit amazed from your first remark about what is the insurance covering or not covering. We are providing a door-to-door insurance policy that is built for cannabis, ensuring all risks, door-to-door, regardless of the Incoterms, just, a very unique and special policy. So what did you mean what is covered and not covered under the insurance? And I fully agree with you about the risk mitigation, which is very important.
Right. So I'll use examples to try and express my point. So let's talk about reefers, for example. So if you are doing the final mile on an international shipment, and the carrier is suggesting they have reefer coverage, which they do. And all of a sudden, your temp recorders or the product is damaged because the temperature didn't read right, or the end receiver doesn't want to take the product because the product's not at the right temperature. You're going to assume, oh, they have reefer coverage, therefore they're insured. Except the reefer coverage states, as long as the reefer's working, then the coverage isn't covering the product. So when people suggest that they have reefer coverage, as long as the reefer's working, then the carrier owes you nothing. So what you need. So what you want to. Correct. Yes. So what you want to make sure is that when someone says that they have proper insurance, that it actually covers the end product, which is it doesn't matter if the reefer's working or not. If the product is not at the right temperature, and therefore you have a coverage claim, that it's covered. So the concept is you want to make sure that the exclusion doesn't state if the reefer's working, it's therefore not our problem, as one example. So it's just an example of many. There are others out there, but the point is in any insurance policy, your home insurance, your car insurance, everyone's buying insurance, and you assume if you buy your car and your car is worth $60,000 and you're getting full coverage, you assume you have $60,000 coverage. Except if it says excluded if your 17-year-old son is driving your car. Then you don't have coverage. So that was really the message behind it.
Does anyone have anything else to add to that? Catherine, Tim, Ryan, anyone?
I mean, I think my broker always says it's not about what's covered, but it's about what's excluded, right? So you don't want to see your list of coverage, you want to see your list of exclusions.
Yep.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of tie into that, insurance, especially in the supply chain world, as some of us kind of understand, when it comes to your house or your house is very understandable, the size of your house, your property. When it comes to logistics and distribution, you're talking about trucks, distance, thousands of kilometers at a time, different types of trucks and sizes. And obviously when we get into the cannabis, 9 times out of 10, those trucks have to have temperature control, right? Even with the airlines. So I think it's just as a whole, understand insurance, understand again, even to your point as well, I know your company obviously has insurance as well. I've, worked with you guys before. So it's just really understanding, make sure if you're the shipper, what do you guys have that is covered? Do you need it? What do you need? Just, I think, have the conversation, right? A lot of clients in the past, and I'm sure Jonas can attest to this, don't even understand that cannabis insurance is a plausibility and that it is a thing. So it's really just educating them that, yes, it is something that we can offer, but it's something that you guys should consider, and these are the reasons why, right? So.
I mean, that helps in building trust as well, right? To actually know the details, what's excluded. That's a really good way to see it.
And make sure your logistics broker actually understands insurance too.
Yes. Okay, I think we have time for one last one. Anybody?
There you are. Go.
All right.
All right, we're going to stay on the same topic here because it's a hot topic. So my name is Joe Correa from Woody Nelson in Canada, Nelson, BC, BC bud, best bud in the world. So my question is this: we ship a lot of product, and we don't use a broker. We do it all in-house. And what we're finding is the shipping companies, they cover a fraction, right, of your loss if you lose it. They never cover 100%. Going to an insurance company, the costs are astronomical. What's the catch?
So
Who wants to take that?
I'll take part of it and try to, and it's a great question, and I'm a big fan of BC. I live in Toronto, but I am a big fan of BC, and I love North.
That's not what you said earlier.
It's 100% what I said earlier. My brother lived in North Van. Okay, so here's what I would tell you. It's a volume game, right? Insurance is a volume game. So the more volume you're moving, the better probability you have low rate insurance. You want to look at deductibles. Deductibles are important. So for example, in our policy, I think $4 million of insurance, you're looking at a $10,000 deductible. Seems good to me. If you're losing $4,000 and you got to cough up $10,000 to replace it, that sounds like a good deal. And you need to really, again, I keep going back to the exclusion part. Like a great example is most policies require that you have 2 drivers in your truck at all time for the last mile, whether you're in Germany or whether you're in Canada, it doesn't matter. And I often would go to bed at night and go, well, what if one driver's sick? Or what if one driver is in the truck and needs to go to the washroom? So now my truck is unguarded, so the driver doesn't get to go to the washroom, can't do anything, just has to sit in the truck all day. It's like not even humanly possible. So you really have to work with your broker to explain what your risks are. They have a responsibility to work with their underwriters to make sure they clearly understand what it is that we're moving and what is the reality, not what people say is happening, what is actually happening, and build a policy that way. So I think to bring down the price, if you're doing it yourself, you don't have the power of many. When we're writing our insurance policy, if I'm dealing with 50 LPs, of which 13 of them ship internationally, I have a much bigger base to go to the underwriters and say, this is how I want to write the policy, and they're more likely to give a rate that I think you would find more compelling as you try and manage a significant number of costs on your P&L.
So, go ahead.
Ask your broker for their historical collection rate.
Yep.
And then you can also, in many municipalities, go to the governing body for insurance providers and access that information as well. Because you can rate brokers by their rate of collection.
And by the way, I'll add one more thing. Like, for example, I have no problem summarizing my insurance policy and giving it to you, and you can go to your insurance broker and say, this guy has this. This isn't like something I make money off of. It's a flow-through cost, right? For me, I want to sleep at night. I got 3 kids, my wife, I got a life. I want to go to bed at night and know I've done everything to protect you. So, whether it's me or anyone else, this should be something that people freely share. It's not a profit center, the insurance component. It's strictly a flow-through cost to protect you and let's be honest, to protect myself.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, if I'm dealing with a logistics company, which many of you are. You guys handle the insurance based on policies that you've put together in-house for yourself and
No,
your clients?
no, it's regulated. It's a regulated industry. So we're working with insurance brokers and underwriters who are willing to write the policy, but we have an insurance broker. Like we're not self-insured, so to speak.
So give me an example of what a pallet of flour.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are over time, and
Way over
we're
time.
getting into the minutia, which is great. No, what?
There's nobody here. Nobody
you can-
next.
Yeah, but I'm hungry.
You can go.
I've been here all day. But I'm saying you guys can all, yeah, that's what I'm
we can
saying.
talk.
I'm just like, give us a chance. So I'm not trying to stop the flow. Let's hear it for everybody. But I'm just saying, we like to run a tight ship, and there's plenty of space. We have a bar.
Thank you,
right?
everybody.
We have a dedicated bar for all of this. We do all that sort of thing. We got to give the people a chance to clean up.